Well, hello there, and welcome once again to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela, and I like to draw. And I like to draw all kinds of things, but mainly things that are, of quite abstract or non-representational, or just designs and patterns that are created by putting shapes and forms and motifs together that I love. I call it entangled art, but I suppose it could be classed as well as Zentangle inspired art. But it was known as entangled before I discovered Zentangle, it has to be said. So I hope you're all well. I'd like to say thank you very much for subscribing, if you're a subscriber, especially if you're a new one. Thank you for coming back to visit. If you're a returning visitor, you're most welcome if you're a new one. And if you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up for the video. It helps YouTube to spread the news to others who might like it as well. So that would be lovely. And I just hope you enjoy. And perhaps even try drawing along with me. This word I'm using for this is coddywomple through each day's pattern exploration. Not necessarily a pattern at the moment, because I'm taking part in the Fragments of Your Imagination challenge, which happens every year in January in the 7F5R challenge Facebook group. Yesterday's fragment was it's actually a tangle pattern treated as if it's a fragment, as if you fill a shape with it or a form with it, and that was perk. So this one here was the original, or the version that was given in the Tangle prompt sheet. And I think I got as far as somewhere over here, maybe. I think up to here. And I had a really bad case of brain fog, and I've got a feeling I may get a case soon. I'm a bit headachy, I'm a bit tired today. I had a broken night's sleep, which is often the case. I don't know how long this is going to last. It could be until my hormones settle back down. Well, my body gets used to the new regime going on here with age. Or maybe not, I don't know. But anyway. So after I'd had a bit of a break, I came back to this, and quite quickly I filled the page. Because I just needed that little bit of clarity of thought and a chance for things to rumble around my head. And I've got some favourite ones here. As well as filling a pattern, I mean, I love this one here, but this is something I often use in flower centres and hadn't really thought of it as perk. Partial fills of a channel inside a shape I also quite like, and then here I just filled the rest of it with a couple of double lines because it didn't feel finished until I did that. I just filled part of this in, which leaves opportunities for these other two. You could fill them in with I did this one yesterday, didn't I? And I talked about how to make each one slightly smaller as you get to the edge to enhance that feeling of volume, dimension of the curve that's happening. And I also thought about, well, if you can put them inside the fragment, why can't we put them outside the fragment to extend it? Which is what I did here, and I ended up with a flower. And then I looked at, instead of straight lines between these, curvy lines. They are my favourite. I love this one. And also in the middle of things like leaves. These are interesting, where you split a geometrical shape like a square in half and then put them on the other side. It really enhances that feeling of folding. Again, that where you place the shadow helps that, because if I'd put the shadow on the outside edge, it would have appeared that the middle was sticking up. A stream with pebbles, or a view from above of trees or hills around a river perhaps. Popping it in a spiral is lovely. A spiral is the first time a spiral shape has appeared almost as a fragment on its own. And in my explorations, and I like that. I mean, there are many tangle patterns that will fit into that channel within this shape, and an awful lot that won't. It just depends on the size that you have. Again here, perk round a square, but this time instead of having very, very circular squares, circular perks, I've created them more as very squished and as half of a leaf, again using that curly shape, and half of a leaf shape instead, you know, instead of having veins on one side and no veins on the other, is putting something different on the other side just to help things just stick there. So this ended up being quite an interesting fragment, I do have to say, and I'm really pleased I went back to it, because it's given me things to think about, including how do I organise all of this in a way that makes sense to me. I love my little pages, don't get me wrong, but when I'm working, I like to refer to just one notebook, and I've got an awful lot of stuff around in sketchbooks and other books, and I think I'd like to draw some of my favourite variations together, as well as put together a list of things to consider when you're creating variations. That's if I can, well, I say remember them all. I can look through my explorations and draw everything together at the end of the month, different ways that I've done things. How I'm going to put that together in a way that makes sense, I don't know. My head is going, oh, you need a flow chart, and I'm thinking it's more going to be like a tangled mind map or mind web of things where you go, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. I don't know. Anyway, today is day 17, so I'm going to pop 17 there. And I've got a rather fat pen here. And today's pattern is called Birthday. And it's been deconstructed by Jessica Davies CZT. And the information I've got says it's inspired by Bales and Cubine. So this is the fragment. Again, this one is not familiar to me at all. So you start with a square, and you pop that leaf shape or rice shape or seed shape in the middle. That's the Bales part. But you also need to, I'm hoping I'm in frame here, do the aura. And then the Cubine part is that diagonal line from the remaining corners to corners and a square there. So that is the original tangle pattern. So I can remove my prompt list. So simple variation, which comes straight to my head. Let's just make that Bales shape there just thinner. And make these sections that much bigger because we've got more space for them. So these are things that you can do just to give a slightly different feel. It's not a huge, they're not huge changes on their own. And it may be that you prefer the one that I'm doing now to this one. It's much more, it's got a bigger graphic feel to it, a bigger hit of black. I wasn't going to do that, I was actually going to do something different, but my head went to that. So again, I'll do a nice big one of these and auras like this. And you can most probably guess what is going to go in the middle here. I'm going to just pop in these a couple of extra auras because I wasn't thinking about what I was doing, and just tiny little corners of a square pointing out, make it that little bit smaller. But that seed pod in the middle is really rather interesting, and you could colour the background in black. but I'm tempted to do to do very fine auras. This is an 01 pen. The other pen I picked up is a uni pin. It's an 05 and it's giving a much broader line. I thought it was the Pigma Micron, but I'm going to work with it. It's a pen. And I cross-hatched with the lines that radiate out from the corners of that shape. So that gives a different shape again. And put some shadow in, like that. Okay. So here we go with this kind of shape again. I put the aura on the outside here and on the inside here to even up that shape because it was a bit lopsided. And I'm going to just pop that line in. Instead of a distinct square there, how about popping in a semicircle? A little variation, but a nice one. And if I do that before I add the diagonal, so I'm going to have to think carefully about where that diagonal line is going to go. Then I think that'll mostly go through the centres, yeah. So that gives a different feel again, and of course that can be done as well with the little squares. There was me about to put the diagonal line in, which wouldn't have been a problem because I'd have just done these around it. So again, I need to think about where the diagonal line will go. I put little spots there so I know where I want my square corner, the corner of a square rather, like that is. And we can just pop that over and pop that in. So I like that because I do like these auras around these black shapes. I feel it somehow feels more finished or polished or just that little bit more intricate to me. And as I was doing that one, I thought, okay, it's another one. Oh, that would be an idea. Is I'm going to draw square in like this. Could be easier to actually do it this way round, to be honest, because you can follow the shape of the square as an aura of these lines rather than trying to guess where that would be, and not put that line in, that diagonal line, is just leave it like that, and that makes quite a nice variation. And that's what I was thinking. And of course we can do that with the circular form as well. And in this case, I'm going to put more than one extra aura. So that's quite nice. And again, I'm going to pop one side in with that diagonal line on both, but leave the other one empty as a reminder that we can do it that way. It just helps me to remember what the difference is and to compare and contrast the way these look and feel. I haven't done much to the centres of these. So if I go back here, if you add a smaller version of that rice shape inside, so you're auraing the actual shape, then you have a space to put plenty of stuff in. As it was Bales yesterday, let's throw some Bales kinds of little seeds in there. I'll do this one because you can do other things as well. I quite like putting spirals in the middle and having them go like that. It's a bit more, I suppose it's a bit like, what do you call it? Muka. It's a kind of little muka in there. And then add a lot of black there to show that that's in shadow. We can do patterns. Got little areas at the end that I'm just going to fill in. And I'll use a finer line to pop the lines in for Shattuck, which is one of my favourite fillers, either as the triangular version or the one that has got more curved lines, so straight lines or curved. I've just wondered I wonder if typical Angela, instead of having, because normally in Shattuck we curve them upwards, what would happen if we curve them inwards? I don't know. That's something for me to think about. So anything can go in there. You could fill it with anything you like. So I've just put a couple of examples there. All right. Okay. Is there anything else that we can do with this one? Pop that in. I'm just going to completely fill that with lines. I'm going to put a very fine border there, so very small gap there. I will pop these lines in because that seems to be an inherent part of the original fragment, but as you can see, they're rather, as I've shown, I rather like them without those lines as well. But I'm going to aura in here, like so, and then in those gaps, perhaps instead of filling them with black, I can fill them with something like tipple. Lots of little circles all put together. You could do Bronx sheer if you wanted something that was much denser, some more black and less light. Bronx sheer is where you almost fill the black circles in and leave distinct gaps between them. And I do particularly like Print Hump. And with this, I am using a finer pen because I want a lot of pattern in here to be able to get that contrast. So doing something like that. I'm also, there we are, I didn't notice that the sun had come around to cast shadows so badly. And then I went and knocked my camera over, so there'll be a slight edit. But I was saying about how using a fine line, you can make the patterns you fill things in with that much smaller, so it increases the density of line. And sometimes when you use a thicker pen to add the patterns, it feels a bit clunky. I guess it depends whether you want those patterns to be very dominant or just there as that addition of shadow almost. And talking of shadow, if I want this to appear that it's really underneath the bales, I can just choose which lines to thicken to give me an instant suggestion of shadow. So my preference is always for, on the outside, it's to the left and to the right. And if it's an inner shadow, it's the top and the right. So left and bottom, top and right. And that makes this feel that we've got light coming this way, hitting this, and these parts are in shadow. And that can even go for here as well, and here. just a little bit. And that helps to lift things up. But obviously adding shadow with a graphite pencil or chalk pastel would work just as well. Okay, what else? I haven't done very much about this rice shape in the middle, have I? So there are things I'm sure we can do. And I am going to aura this way, and I'm going to put a line at the end that will mimic these ones here as well, which will mess with the space here just a bit. I made a bit of a mess there, I'm sure you'll forgive me. So we've added those little details there. My favourite thing to do in a shape like this is to add, I say favourite, it's maybe not favourite, but it's one of the things we can do, is to add that kind of furling nature, as if it's we've got a part of it curling upwards, and that can be enhanced if we pop some orbs in like that, as if they're tucked underneath. So that's quite a nice thing to do. I think so. And a bit of this little pattern I like to do. And of course we can add this in, and instead of colouring it in black, because there's a lot of black in here, and sometimes if this black was the same as this black, it would look like this is part of that, and I don't want that. So I'm going to add lines radiating from the corner of these squares, like so, these tucked under squares. So that's something else that can be done. Can we change the shape of this in here? Don't know. I'm sure I could. Ah, is this Naki? One of the fragments earlier on this month. It's going to go like that. So that could work. Let's pop these squares in. I am going to colour these ones in black. And I think I've settled, haven't I, that I really like these auraed rather than just plain black. But that's another one. And I'm just going to pop a couple of seeds in there simply because I can. And then with my finer pen, I'm going to add some lines just to separate them, and a couple of little shadow lines. So we can vary that shape there. I think we could even take it almost to a very extreme kind of shape as well. Where it's almost as circular as I can get it without it being a circle. And then here's our little black corners. And I will fill these ones in all in black. Like so. So that again is a different feel. Lots of space in here for adding pattern. So with this one I'm going to weave the auras like that. So that's a completely different kind of feeling as well. You'd have thought that this could be so fun. Alrighty. Okay, so done squares. What about triangles? Well, yeah, of course. And triangles, I've tried in other patterns, I've tried putting the bale shape across and it just doesn't work. It needs to fit in from corner to corner or corner to edge, like this. And then we can have little triangle shapes coming off like that. So that's the variation. And so anything I can do in a square, I can do in a triangle in some ways. So let's make this quite a thin one. With quite a large area there. It is a lot easier to draw the border this way, of this area, if you in this kind of fashion. Oh, that's something I didn't do with this one, was it? Where I've drawn a double aura, but I've added that line there. I'll show you again. I'll do it on a square because it would be nice to have that version in a square format as well. So I drew my bale shape in quite thinly. I created the auras like this. Then I did another aura'd line within, so I've got corners of squares again, but instead of doing the line out here, I went in here. And you could, if you want to go really titchy tiny, is add another one. And I perhaps would make that one black, so we can have layers of these. So that's interesting. There we are. And that came from me putting that there. So that's a different version perhaps. Well, it is. It's just a different way of adding the auras. Go back to a triangle. With this bales, I put a central line in first, which is something I wouldn't ordinarily do. But I'm auraing around it from the outside, from the inside out, so I can get a really plumptious version of bales there. And I'm going to put a tiny triangle in there with a smaller one within it. And just pop that there. So that's interesting and fun as well. And I'm sure that even with this one, we can pop, instead of that sort of the corner, well, that's the triangle, that's the corner of a triangle, isn't it? Rather than here we've got the corner of a square. It's to do a circle as well. That looks a bit clunky but is interesting at the same time. I'm guessing I didn't do this for squares, But let me have a go with this one. It's what my head has just thought of. With these, what about if we make them really quite not very tall but quite long, so it's more of an oval than a circle, and perhaps add another aura. This may be taking us away from the original a bit, but we'll pop that back in. It goes back to it, so again that feels different. I think I'd need something here just to help to define the bale shape, but it adds something there, something a bit different. And the other thing I've just thought about, put a simple bale shape in. I'm going to pop a small triangular corner on each one here. I'm going to aura it. And then what about doing something with the lines there, and perhaps popping a little circle of bead in the lines, or a different shape, something like so if I pop that in, pop the lines in this time, pop a little heart in there. Something to think about. I don't know how well it will work, but it could be interesting. But everything else really is the same as we would do for the square. I'm trying to think of other variations I could do, but I don't know. Let's go on to some other shapes, some that might not be quite so easy to do this with. So let's have a look at a random kind of wibbly wobbly shape. How would we approach this? Part of me says, let's pop these shapes in the middle and then have the lines going that way, because that's essentially what it is. So that's quite interesting. That's a different kind of thing. In a teardrop, bales in the middle, and then the aura would be the shape of this curve. So you can see I've this curve and this curve, it's the same shape, and we can just shade that in. This one, there's no corner really to put that line in, so I think we'd have to think about where perhaps it might go, or where it would look quite nice. Possibly like that. I'm not so keen on that. I think I'd prefer to leave it to do that kind of shape with perhaps a small darker area and an aura, and just leave it like that perhaps. The other thing I thought of as I was drawing this is, well, what about if we did half a bales down one side? How would that work? And I think the answer is in an interesting manner. So there's my half bales here, sort of, and then so I've put 3 lines instead of the one there, because those ones just feel that little bit awkward. Whereas if I add an aura, that feels a bit more purposeful, I suppose, more part of a pattern. And 3 lines is really quite cute. I do like odd numbers, things in odd numbers. Okay, so we did one going from top to bottom, but we've got a bales kind of shape at the bottom, or half a bales. And it's easy enough to put a full bales in at the bottom of this shape, isn't it? And then if I pop that central line in and just pop something like that there, I'm trying to echo or mirror these shapes, echo these shapes, follow those shapes, and it kind of works, just kind of. So that's something else that could be done for a different kind of feeling. And the same would be the case with a circle, really, is we could pop the bales in the middle like this, and you get that semicircular o-ring there with or without lines. We could create a bales on one part of the circle edge, and it's easy enough to change the size or position of this, and again we can pop that kind of idea underneath. But I also think with circles in particular, it would be quite easy to put a bales sort of off center, so we've got an asymmetric one really. So that would work, and I think, would we be able to bend bales? This will be interesting. So if I take this is the central line, so we could work like this and just pop those little bits on either side. So that could be that's another way of drawing the same thing. I thought I'd be able to bend bales in its entirety, but I can't see how I can do that easily. I'm sure I could if my head had had more caffeine this morning, or headache pills, or whatever I need. I have got a bit of a headache, so that's an interesting one. Okay, other shapes. I've said before, but this ginkgo leaf kind of shape is essentially a triangle. So this bales idea is really nice as the central line, or the middle of a leaf, or using as a pattern on leaves. I'll come back to a leaf shape another time perhaps. With or without auras. So if I pop an aura on one side, in fact this one it would need an aura I think, and then down here we just repeat almost a line that curves this way like this one, and then a curvy one this way. And pop that. So that would work as well. Okay, a hexagon is going to work, but with hexagons we really do have two options as to where we place the bale. So so this one is from a corner to a corner. You can see that I'm ordering this shape, the shape of the edge inside. With this one we get two of these, so it looks like we've got a seed sitting above a gem. The other way of using a hexagon is, instead of going from corner to corner, is going from one side to another side like this, and then the aura would be a little bit different because you'd have to follow this line a little bit, down, up, down, depending on how big you make this. You can see the smaller it is in the middle here, it's just a triangle. Again, I'm going to pop that line there, and then these ones can go here to these. And so again, we've got that, I say again a lot, and I don't mean again, but it's got a different kind of feeling. I'm not quite sure. I think I prefer this one. This one feels a bit clunkier. Okay, other shapes. Ooh. Semicircles. The obvious place to put the bale is at the bottom. And then we can have, oops. It's a nice thing about doing, if you're going to colour things in black, if you make a mistake, you can easily correct it and hide the original version. So that would be a version. The other kind of way we can do a semicircle is to use this side as our bales, like this. That one in there. And then, I'm not quite sure, how would I do that? Because we'd have if you wanted to aura that, we'd have quite a strange shape. Do that anyway, and let's have a look at it. It is a semicircle with the top curve just hidden underneath here. That's unusual. I'm not sure I like it, but it is unusual. Perhaps the bales needs to be a bit bigger on the edge. And the same token, let's have a look at a polygon type of shape. We could pop a bales here, fill that in middle one with black, and then I think I'd just pop a circle in and perhaps down to the middle corners. That's an unusual thing. I'm not sure about this one. Let's try it in a different way and have the bales on this side. That feels more like it. That feels more comfortable already. I have to say that. It feels more like a seed that you'd get. What kind of seed am I thinking about? I don't know. But it feels more like a seed than anything else. And then we can work it that way. So that would work. So that doesn't work very well. That one does work a bit better. And I'm sure we could pop them in the corners, but I think that would look clunky as well, so I'm not going to. Any other options? I'm trying to think. What else have I done? Well, I've got a heart shape up there, and I don't think I've used a heart shape fragment yet. Breaking boundaries here. And I used a spiral yesterday, so has that given me the confidence or got my creativity working for different shapes? Don't know. One line from these would look quite strange, but I think if we work around and put plenty of lines in, then that works that little bit better, doesn't it? It's still a bit odd, but it works, and I'm sure there are people out there who will take this and run with it and create something rather wonderful from it. Yeah, it's odd, but it kind of works. Think of the odd ones. I think that one's my favourite. I do like the hexagon there. I particularly have a fondness for teardrop shapes. I quite like all of the squares and the triangles. We haven't done a pentagon. So this is going to be from a corner to a side, and then the auras will essentially follow these shapes. This I say auras, these corners follow the shape of the sides. So it'd work like that. I'm not sure, you might want to pop just pop an aura in there. So we can do a corner to corner there, but it might be that you'll need a corner to corner there just to make it look gem-like, I suppose. It depends. They look a bit awkward though, so I had to try it to see. Just trying to think if there's any other shape. Don't think so. Oh, an irregular kind of shape. Oh, that's a pentagon, but I've gone from one side to the other. So if I'm going to be consistent, I'll put those shapes on both sides. I'm going to have to colour it all in now. That doesn't feel right. But that makes a bit more sense, but it's still not a good variation. And I think if we did a strange, oh, that's a kite shape, isn't it? I was hoping to get something that was a really uneven four-sided shape. Obviously not going to work for me today. So that works just the same way. You'd get a different feeling if you went from this corner to this corner, but it would be the same kind of pattern. So plenty of stuff here to look at. I'll just get my trusty Carbothello pencil here, and let's have a look at some shading and see how that brings these to life a little bit, perhaps. Not too much of this today, but I think it's helpful to see the ways that you could add shadow. So with this one, I've added a little bit of the chalk pastel in the corners of the inside rice shape, and then just a little bit on the outer part to shade the frame behind. And this one, I think I'll do like that. Let's have a look. So I've gone underneath this line, underneath this line, just to add some shadow, and then I'll add some under this line at the top, just to have a consistent way of adding the shadow, repeating pattern of shadow, if you will. So that's quite interesting. This one, we could add some shadow around these parts here. I don't know how that will work or what it will look like, but I'm just thinking about something different. I'm not saying these two methods have to go together, but there we go. Yeah, sort of works. Trying to think any others here that would benefit. Would help to see what's going on. Where's that odd shape? It's here. So let me just add. I'm only going to add shadow around the shape, as if it's sunken in a hole, you know, underneath a hole in a piece of paper, a hole in the ground. You've discovered a hole, you're looking down, you're thinking, what on earth is that part of? And you might go, oh, it looks like a weird canoe with oars sticking out the side. And it does. It does look that way. I'm going to add some more the top just to darken it. But I'm also going to add some shadow now. It's the whole of it really, just to perhaps some more at the bottom and perhaps on the sides, just to darken those a little bit. Lovely thing about chalk pastel, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you haven't rubbed it in too hard, you can pick some of it up with an eraser, so we can reintroduce a highlight, which is there. So that's a bit of a strange one. Any others that... This one. Pop that there so this feels that this one is way above it. Just take this there and just wipe up some of that. Just keep that one there. So that feels like something's folding over. This one. So the outer parts I want dark, and then keep that highlight in the middle. Perhaps some shadow around each side, just a little bit. So that's quite an interesting feeling. With these I would add some shadow where I've popped those shadow lines, and perhaps some shadow along here. So to the seeds, just at the base where I've got that shadow. And along there, just to make it feel that this is deeper, further back than the others. And perhaps under this. Perhaps I'll do the whole of under this. So it feels that it's sat on top of the underlying tile. Be interesting. Everything else is pretty much of a muchness. This one could be interesting, I think, because of how perhaps we play with where we pop the shadows. Could end up quite mechanical looking in a weird way. That creates a strange kind of a feeling of that being bent in a way that metal can be bent with the sharp edges, and you can have those curves, you know, one side will curve out, the other side curves in. I haven't quite mastered that, but I'd get there. This one. I don't know if this will make this feel like it belongs there, but perhaps have the idea that perhaps this is it now looks like we've got a tunnel going backwards, and this is something that is over the front of the tunnel, doesn't it? Just a bit. That's an interesting kind of thing. And that's two lines that have done that. The one line doesn't quite work that way. Interesting. Something else to explore. I like that. Now I've added shadow, I like that, and I like what I could do with that. But that's perhaps for another day. So I'm going to pop this on its side so you can have a good view, a good picture, a good image at the end of this. I've got my camera's all a bit skew. If I really didn't check on that, well, did I? There we are, we can do that. I'll pop my tools here so I can get an interesting photograph at the end of it. Let's move them over a bit. There we go, that's a bit better, isn't it? So I hope you've enjoyed this. Hopefully I'll manage to successfully cut out where I knocked the camera over. Oh, it's one of those days. Ugh. I hope you found this interesting. I hope it's given you some ideas of things to try. It's an awkward one in some ways to vary for me, because there's two very strong features in it, and if you change or leave one out or change one too much, you lose that essence of it. Like I say, I try to keep the essence of the original fragment, and sometimes it does lead me to very different kinds of things. It's nice to try a different shape. The heart, it doesn't quite work, although I think it could. Actually, I'll just move this out the way, get my glasses back, pop them out the way so I don't knock them off. Try this in a different way, because if I do a heart that is quite rounded, then instead of having the bales in the middle, how about having the bales off to one side, like I did with the circle? So here's the centre of it, and then have that on that side. Oh, I see what's happening. It's me moving my paper around here, my background paper. So that, I think, would work much better. I'm in danger of smudging the ink here, but I think I'll risk it just for this. There we go. That works. In a strange way, but it works. That shadow really did help. A little bit on that side could be useful. But yeah, so that is how to create. I'm happier with that than I am with that. That's for sure. And I almost think you could put bales on both sides in some ways and have these meet in the middle. I don't know is the honest answer on that one. I am not going to try, because I think I could be pushing my luck with that one. But we've got some interesting things here, some that work, some that don't, some that are food for thought. And I'm absolutely sure, I know darn well that I have not got the entirety of the possibilities for what you can fill these with, how you can vary the shape of that bales. I've done it there. Part of me thinks, yes, we can split it into two. You could have two bales there. Okay, space. I've got a bit of space here. Teeny tiny square. Central point. I'll zoom in for you just this once today. Move it there. Central point. And do this like so, perhaps. So they meet in the middle. And the other way I've just thought of, oh darn it, oh, there's a little gap here. Instead of starting at the point, you could start further over, but instead of having those lines going out, we could have them going in, which I'm sure is another tangle. It's got that feeling of being familiar, but it's changing that shape of bales, isn't it? Just that little bit. So that's another possibility. I'm sure I've seen this one somewhere else. It's got that feeling of familiarity, but I don't know what it is. But it's the same kind of idea, is that we have, we've got the shape of the fragment, which in this case is square, and you can't see that because I've just moved it completely out of your way, sorry. We've got the shape of the fragment, which is square, and here we've put the rice shape of bales over, but instead of using that rice shape or the leaf shape, we've used this, which is a bit like Huggins, is it? We've got these two going there, but kept that idea of that square behind it to work that way. So that means that if I bring this over here, I've got a tiny little space, is that we could use any kind of shape in a Huggins fashion, not Huggins, Bales fashion, and then order it to get that kind of shape here. So that would work as well. A couple of extra ideas there. And of course these can be applied here as well. I've got space for a triangle here. An upside down one, but that's fine. So if I take this, it's not very even because I'm rushing, because I know that I've just probably taken up a lot of time here today with this. And I also am aware that I've got things to do today as well, other things. But that would work as well. So lots of possibilities just suddenly coming up right at the end of this. I do have some odd bits of paper here, but as I say often, I can't possibly get all the possible variations done in one day, one session. I do hope you found this interesting. I do hope that you'll return to see the next one, which will be tomorrow, day 18. And if you've enjoyed what you've seen, if you stuck through to the end, then thank you very much. Please consider giving me a thumbs up as well. Okay, for now, I'll say bye-bye, take care, and find time to be creative. Bye-bye. Hoyle. Bye.